All right. Dead trees. I was thinking about how even dead trees have purpose. This is so weird because it's like a blog entry, so like where I was when I was doing this, where I was when I was doing this is like obviously completely different. So doesn't entirely make sense in your context, but whatever, I'll stop defending my work. All right. I was thinking about how even dead trees have purpose. Looking out the window, I see a vulture sitting high on a branch of a dying tree in the early morning, wings outstretched and basking in the sun to dry its feathers from the morning dew and warming its bones in the early light, stretching to limber its muscles and fluttering its wings to settle its feathers before leaning forwards and letting go. It's less of a takeoff and more of a fall as it turns its motion into a dip, and then away it soars. I used to watch them as a child. Eating my cereal on the porch and warming up in the early summer sun, I would watch the birds land on this old dead tree on the forested hill by my house. It never occurred to me that the tree needed to be removed. It was the buzzard tree. Smaller birds would land on it to take a quick break throughout the day as well. It wasn't just one species using it as a resource, it was useful. I remember someone once saying it was an eyesore, but I protested the thought of its removal. The birds could have found somewhere else to land, but the thickly needled branches of the evergreens are harder for the larger birds to navigate to find a safe perch. Landing lower puts them at more risk of predators. The dead trees were safe. Why should we prioritize our artistic aesthetic over actual value? I think that there is nothing more chronically depressing than being useless and having no sense of value or purpose. Well, aside from having your own actions damage those you care about, that is more depressing and also ties into guilt and a lot of other emotions, though. But for the most part, for the most of us, especially as we age, just because our original purpose is no longer available, it doesn't mean that another cannot be found. Humans are creatures of comparison. It's not always a negative. It's how we determine the boundaries of ourselves and how our experiences correlate to those of others. After a lifetime of comparisons, our experiences are valuable beyond the concept of currency. We have answers because we've lived. The breakdown in communication between generations is just a terrible loss for the children desperate for answers to this life they are forced to live. With the widespread movement of information, everything is changing so suddenly. Words and thoughts come from everywhere now and suddenly mean different things. Even if the same words are used, the meanings don't mesh. Frustration and drastic shifts in perception prevent us from recognizing the value of the words of our elders. Admittedly, some of them are just assholes who don't seem to have learned much more than how to be mean. Often these people have such amazing stories buried within a lifetime of rejection and defense mechanisms, if you can get past the attitude. But trauma isn't an excuse to be cruel, and some people can't see past that. The concept of filial piety isn't really included in American culture. Blood is thicker than water, which is already completely misunderstood and misused, has lost meaning. We don't have emotional ties to our older generations. They just want to tell us about their pain and boss us around. They aren't relevant anymore, so we disregard them. Their attempts to correct the decaying patterns are just treated as interference. I wonder if there are generational gap communication courses, classes where changes in conceptual ideations are taught so that our elders can communicate with us again, classes for our youth so that they understand the method of relaying information and can find appreciation for the meanings of the stories they hear. Classes in storytelling, basically. The way we listen to stories has changed so much. It used to be that we paid attention. We looked closely at the expressions and movements in order to build the scenes in our mind as though we were there as well. Now the kids are programmed on electronics. Their eyes and hands are occupied, but their ears are still listening. Before, not looking someone in the eye was disrespectful. Now it's seen as challenging and slightly dangerous behavior. It's not safe to look someone in the eyes for many of our children. If they have to look into your eyes, Their ears are no longer hearing, and they often can't process what they are actually hearing. I said that weird, but whatever. Animated body language and movement is unusual in a world where everyone acts so restrained. It's a shame because it's harder to have a good connection without properly observing others. There are ways around it. It's part of why we take our kids out to eat. Food occupies the hands and the eyes, but leaves the ears free and provides an opening point. Mealtime has come to feel like an inquisition to many of our children, though. They don't know why we keep asking the same basic, boring questions that they have to find safe answers for, and it's meaningless chatter. We don't know our kids, so our questions lack depth. Interactive conversations are a rarity for most parents now. Can we get some training on this side of things, please? Group meals with multiple generations allows us to break the ice and provide new stories and perspectives to our children. It's a shame that the breakdown is several generations old and those meals are infrequent now. Our society is so focused on the self and establishing our personal independence and uniqueness that we've broken the bonds to those who can provide context to the shape of who we are. Without their input, we are less whole than we should be. Relationships just aren't meant to be so surface based. It's interesting to see how homeschooled kids are treated differently. They don't know how to banter, they only know how to tell stories and how to listen, so we look down on them. Witty repartee and comebacks are learned behaviors. They have their place, but they lack substance as well. Why do we treat stories as boring? All we are as people is the summation of our stories. Why do we reject what makes us truly unique? No one else will have our stories. Friendships forged in shared experiences make for fond recollection in our later years when we reminisce and recount our favorite tales. They are our memories of defining moments, and we're being indoctrinated to believe that they lack value. I hope you can find a medium that allows you to share your memories and experiences. What we learn about in school is so watered down that we have no true comprehension of what the past was actually like. The most basic understanding is lacking, and we don't even know to miss it because we're spending all our time trying to keep up with the new that we've lost the meaning in the old. Even a dead tree has purpose. Change your perspective and find your value once again.